Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Work Culture, a virtual event hosted by BizBash and Six Connects. I'm Shannon Thaler, BizBash's senior editor, and I'm thrilled to be joining an impressive lineup of industry experts for discussions on remote work, DEI, CSR, wellness, and more. All things that are top of mind for many professionals as we forge forward in a post-COVID workforce. If you have any questions for our panelists, please be sure to drop them in the chat to be asked in the Q&A session at the end of our speaker sessions at 2:15 p.m. To start, I'd like to introduce Michael Chance, a customer experience manager at Six Connects. Michael has a background in interactive media development, which he leverages in his current role to manage high-level projects for industry-leading companies. Also from Six Connects, we're joined by seasoned financial executive Emily Wilson. She has more than 20 years of experience in financial management and operations, including venture capital fundraising, debt lending, and corporate restructuring. Please welcome Michael and Emily.
Hi there. Thank you for joining us today for Not Your Average House Party. I am Emily Wilson, CFO here at Six Connects. You might be wondering if you're in the right place or why it is that a CFO made it onto the agenda to speak about the future of work culture. But here at Six Connects, HR and all things that come with it fall under my umbrella, in addition to the more traditional finance and accounting activities. So we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about remote work. I don't think anyone would argue that remote work is here to stay. And that's not just in the event industry, but across almost all industries. I'm going to touch on some of the things that we're doing to bring our workforce together, drive engagement, and foster communication. Then I'm going to hand you over to one of my colleagues who will be giving you a short demo. Let me start off and tell you a little bit more about Six Connects and our culture. Here at Six Connects, we place a great deal of emphasis and value on communication, collaboration, and community. We're about 85% remote, and that's not something that's new for us. We were primarily remote even before the pandemic. We have team members on 4 continents and in close to 20 different countries. Our teams span a multitude of time zones and speak a variety of languages, which can create some challenges. But we choose to embrace the diversity that comes with being spread out around the globe. And we make it a priority to ensure that our teams have a voice within Six Connects. If we flip to the next slide, we're highlighting a few of the ways that we connect and keep communication flowing throughout the organization. Many of these programs are the result of listening to feedback from our team members about what they wanted and needed in order to stay connected with each other and with leadership. One of the first things that we did after I joined Six Connects was to establish a culture team. We looked for volunteers, people who were interested in forming the committee and wanted to be involved in planning activities and events for their peers. We have a monthly schedule that rotates through a variety of themes and areas of interest, including DEI, wellness, training and development, and fun. We created an MVP program to recognize team members who are nominated by their peers for going above and beyond and for exemplifying the core values of Six Connects. We announce our MVP winners at our all hands meetings, and then they get to claim a spot on our virtual wall of fame. We launched a mentorship program this year. That was the result of feedback that we received from one of our semi-annual EMPS surveys. The program ran for 7 months, and we found it to be hugely successful based on the positive feedback that we received after the program ended from both mentees and mentors, both of which who found it very rewarding. We created a Day in the Life of series in response to requests from team members who are looking for career shadowing opportunities and to better understand the different roles in different departments throughout the organization. This series has also proven to be one of our more popular initiatives, And it gives a glimpse of what it's like to be an SDR or a QA manager to someone who might not otherwise have a reason or a need to engage with someone on the sales team or the technology team. It adds visibility and understanding across the org. We set up a series of monthly sessions with our CEO meant to have an Ask Me Anything format. It's an opportunity to join Ruben, our CEO, and a rotating member of the leadership team once a month in an open forum to discuss anything that's top of mind, whether it's last night's football game or what's up next on the product roadmap. These conversations are intended to be unstructured and informal and really take the place of bumping into Ruben in the kitchen if we were in a physical office and having that chance to ask him a quick question or just have a quick chat. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Extravaganza, which is not only the place where we host different fun activities, happy hours, trivia contests, but it also serves as a central hub for all of our department-specific information, resources, and collateral. This is our office. We come here for our monthly all-hands meetings. We post our company calendar here and our quarterly goals. It's the place where Six Connects comes together from anywhere in the world at any time of the day or night. I'm going to turn you over now to Michael Chance, one of our customer experience managers, to give you a tour of our Extravaganza environment and let you see what I'm talking about.
Thanks, Emily. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Chance and I am a customer experience manager here at Six Connects. I've been with the organization for a little over a decade, and 7 of those years I've actually been working remote. One of the cool things about Six Connects, we refer to ourselves as 6C fam. We are all kind of one big family globally. We've got various different team members in almost every continent. But I gotta say, it all feels like we're just one big family. We're one big organization. And the transparency in our organization is also pretty amazing. While we have kind of big meetings like all hands meetings and extravaganza events, which you'll see here in a moment, really we all just kind of come together and actually speak to one another with kind of a goal-oriented mindset, right? We're here for each other. We've got key initiatives we need to complete. We really have our eyes set on those initiatives and goals. And so this site is very much focused on elevating what those initiatives are, making them transparent and visible to everyone right here in this main area, which is called our communication hub. And then from there, they can actually go in and dive into specific department rooms, various other kind of focus rooms and areas. And that really helps them to kind of get the information they need for any one individual task. But it all kind of builds up to a very specific initiative for most of our work. So with that, one thing I'd love to just kind of share with you is consider what you're seeing here as something that is not a repository like a library. It is not a static kind of site like an intranet. It is very much geared to have a pulse. And the way we do that is by actually taking things that are deeper in these various rooms and actually giving kind of primacy to specific ones. We're kind of noting over here on the right-hand side all these quick tip items, all these items that are really important for all of us to focus on. Things like various initiatives and meetings that we want everyone to attend and be aware of right on our company calendar. Now, me as an individual in the client services department, I can see what items are important to me. And just for an example here, the all hands meeting in October and the extravaganza Halloween event that I'm helping prepare for internally in early November, these things are scheduled and they're made visible to the entire org all here in one location. But we actually go a step further, which is pretty cool. And we've never seen this, at least I haven't, in any other organization, is taking a company calendar and really breaking it down. So what we do in our full company calendars, we actually break it down by all hands meetings, extravaganza events, platform releases for our software for our clients, so our products, and then HR and culture events, webinars and online events, in-person events like our BizBash Detroit event that we went to with our booth, trainings, and holidays. Because again, if you're working with a team member that's building items and they're overseas, hey, you need to make sure you understand when they're going to potentially be out of office because of upcoming holidays. Now, all that's also directly communicated within departments, but here at an aggregated level, we've got a pulse, we understand what's happening. We can also jump into really important other things here too, such as, again, who hasn't had a problem, trying to submit a support ticket? Where do you submit it? All these things never been a problem for us, because not only have we had good portals in the past, what we're doing now is we're taking all of our various portals and various different support forms, and we've aggregated them together into one place. We're making the complex simple for our team members. They don't need to be spending 5, 10, 15 minutes making sure they're going through the right process. Make the process simple. Just make one room, go into Extravaganza, submit your form here, and you've got your ticket. So that's really what we try to do. And again, we try to take away the boundaries. As you can see here, we've got things for our products where our staff members can submit tickets on behalf of their managed clients. But at the same time, we also have over here internal initiatives. Go ahead and submit things for MVP, for Voice of Six Connects. And this is critical too. For Voice of Six Connects, we've got the submission form here, but also in the Communication Hub main area, we also have a time bracketed promotion of it too, because it's that critical of an initiative that we want our staff members to see it and submit to it. So again, these things, redundancy, I think sometimes gets a bad rap, or it's kind of seen as a bad word. It's a good thing. You want to be redundant with your communication and very specific for specific initiatives in certain areas within your venue, because that's going to really forge adoption, right? If someone's not necessarily paying attention to one area, let's make sure they see it in another where it's contextual and it's critical. Now, in addition to that, you can also see the Stay Social area. This is really great. I feel like this is an agenda for our event here. You can like these, you can open them, you can share the post with other staff members or clientele. It's taking what's happening on the daily and actually giving it out to your staff and making sure they're aware of it. And let's go a step further. Let's actually jump into a social area. Let's see all those posts aggregated in a bigger feed. Let's be able to post to it individually ourselves and post things that we're interested in, not just to the social thread. No, let's post it to this wall right here through a QR code, making it easy for our staff members. And as you can see here, we've got team members on site at BizBash in Detroit. We've got Chelsea and Devin there. Again, now I've got a new little thing to talk to them about when I've got my next meeting. Really helpful. It's great icebreaker stuff, great things to stay contextual with your teammates on. So really fun. Now, beyond that, we also have some core areas that we're going to jump into. First of which, we can dive into any department room, or we can actually go into a department lobby, which is so much fun. This department lobby allows us to basically see every single department in full 360. This is truly our virtual office in full 360. So I don't know anybody else that's doing stuff like this, but pretty cool. You can jump into the all hands or extravaganza here. Again, redundancy, a good thing. We've got it in multiple locations. And you can see here, we can jump into a specific department. So again, I'm not in the HR department, but I can learn everything about the HR department right here. I can get all of the items within culture. I can jump into just day in the life videos. I can filter this entire thread here and just look at all these videos. I can learn about Gabriel and what he does in our organization. Again, I wasn't there for the live, but I can be here for the on-demand. So those meetings are now content. Really cool. I've got a playlist I can go through. As an individual here of our organization, I can kind of say which items are important to me, and I can pull those into my individual favorite list, right? My briefcase. I can continue courses I started. I can see what progress I'm on there. Really great. And in addition to that, again, for me in culture, like in HR, I also want to know, for me as a U.S. employee, what are the benefits I have and all those things. I don't have to go to another portal. And if I do, it's all aggregated here as a jumping off point. Really easy. In addition to that, every department has the ability to receive suggestions, full transparency in our organization. So anonymously, we can submit suggestions and feedback to any department lead. We can also learn about these individuals So we can watch a video here on Emily, right? We can learn about her as an individual and not just her role, right? We can jump into other rooms, and let's say I don't have all the context about a specific department. Maybe I don't understand all the categories that are on display here. Maybe I'm a new hire and I'm just completely fresh to it. Not a problem. Let's create an overview video for the entire department room.
Hi, and welcome to the Marketing Resources Room.
So that was from Meg, our creative director. She made that in real time. We placed it in here. It's super fast and easy. So again, these things don't take a lot of effort in this day and age for creating these types of materials and making sure you're positioning things accurately. Always take the point of view of the attendee or the staff member. They're coming into this room. Do they have the context they need to understand what they need to do in this location? If not, guide them through it. Overview video, really engaging rich media. Do it that way, it's fantastic. Again, I can learn about our CMO. Very easy, right? So this kind of contextual information is very helpful. And I can even go so far as to learn about all of our executive staff members in our company focus room. So we just went from department focus to now company focus. And now I got it at this high umbrella level. I can see things not just live, but also archived and on demand. That's critical for a virtual office. You've got the ability to have these tentpole moments, these meetings that are really critical, pulls everyone together. But outside of that, you can see all the information, initiatives, vision on demand, right? Really helpful stuff. Suggestion box for our entire executive teams, key Slack channels for us to participate and communicate in. Really great stuff all here, and we can even learn about every single executive team member. All right, outside of all that, we also have our toolbox area, great area to aggregate all of our additional materials in. We're also celebrating and using our awards as artwork in these rooms. So we've got G2 awards that we've got on display. But most importantly, how do we come together as a community? As Emily shared with you, we've got quarterly extravaganza events. They've been a big hit. We've got guest speakers. We've got team members who joined in our Eurovision extravaganza event. And like our CTO, Henry, he started playing the guitar. Didn't even know he played. So there's these awesome moments that you get with a remote office as long as you give them the opportunity and you make it have consistency. That's really key, the consistency. Not just in these meetings, but also in your initiatives. Initiatives like MVP. You know, people working for that goal of being an MVP, they're really trying to attain that key goal, right? And the same thing for all of our other team members that just want to have fun, right? Let's make sure we give them the trivia and other things where they can actually learn about other team members in other regions, learn about their culture and things like that within our trivia within extravaganza. So you can position that agenda within an extravaganza 90-minute event once a quarter in a very unique way. And again, just like the experience in your measuring trends and analytics, you can measure your team's feedback and adoption within these types of community-based events internally. It's really fun stuff. So so again, really cool extravaganza event in a full 360 room that you can access it in. Really fun to explore hidden items in here too. But one final area I just want to note, it's our individual focus room. And this room is really critical for team members that just need to have a little break and refresh, or they want to see how they could, help themselves with like their career and other things internally. So not only do we have benefits, we got a wellness studio in here too. We got Spotify playlists that team members can join in. We've got various paid elements in here too. We've got meditation videos. Again, I think we've all seen a lot of this stuff, but I think where we forget is giving our staff members a voice. I got a team member in my department, Chelsea, very creative individual. She loves these animated videos from this thing called Simon's Cat. And it's really fun. So again, this is an individual stepping up, giving their content for the rest of the org to enjoy. Again, all you have to do is take those materials and place it in here. It's low level of effort, but it's big transparency and reward for the rest of the org. Everybody's got a voice. And also, I think sometimes you lose that those water cooler moments when you're in virtual, but you got to build them back in. I think that's the thing that we've been forgetting. We've been forgetting the spontaneity of actually having fun in certain areas with kind of just like hidden items, right? We've done, treasure hunts and things like that, but let's do things that are more contextual for our team members. If we're a global organization, we speak the same corporate language, but we speak many different languages, and sometimes we speak various different fun slang terms and things like that. So we've got our headquarters out in Texas. We can learn to speak Texan. Again, these are fun, just very low level things where we've got like little libraries of terms and things that we can kind of go back to and laugh about in meetings. And again, you can also have little hidden items like this, like clicking on the coffee mug as Dwight trying to drink coffee. Hilarious stuff. Again, use a little bit of that spontaneity, things you wouldn't expect or that you'd be surprised about when you click on things that you weren't thinking about clicking on because you're not guided to it, So that's some pretty fun stuff to consider. Now, outside of all of this, one of the most important things to consider is connection with other team members. And the way we do that is by also taking a look at our shared interests. You can do that by clicking on our matchmaking feature. This brings up 40 connections with team members based off your registration criteria. This helps you to understand, like certain team members like Daniel here, what they're interested in and who they are as individuals and what departments they're in. So we can actually jump into conversations, and I can even look for individuals based off of their profile details as well. So I can see what people they admire. I can see what's their favorite season, what's their favorite meal, are they a Mac or a PC person, do they have any good recipes or good recommendations for shows. All those things you can start to use as icebreaker moments with individuals you haven't met before, and you can do that all here within your virtual office. So again, from the individual to the department to the company, all of it has a focus and it has a home within your remote virtual office here. I hope this has been inspirational and exciting for you guys.
Thank you, Emily and Michael. Extravaganza looks so awesome. Really shows how much our workplace has already evolved. In our next session, Amanda Ma will be talking DEI and how industry professionals can think independently together. Amanda is the founder and CEO of Innovate Marketing Group, an experiential agency based in LA that provides full-service event management. She's worked with brands such as Google, TikTok, and East West Bank, and we're so honored to have her here today. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me today, Shannon.
Yeah, of course. To start off, I want to just say conversations on DEI are great, but right off the bat, without tools, there can be a lot of missed opportunities. So what tools exist that people can leverage to ensure they're thinking of DEI and even taking it to the next level?
That's a fantastic question. A lot of time there's been so many great conversations, you're right, but in terms of, action is really what will drive change. So in terms of tools, what I always tell people is it's okay that you don't know DI, or even if you're not familiar with DI, because there are consultants out there and people that do this professionally and that have been doing this for a long time. So that's one of the great tools if you're just starting out on your journey. And another one is reaching out to your local chamber, as well as there's lots of resources in terms of books as well that you could tap into that is on the topic of DEI.
Yeah, that's awesome. What has been the most difficult part for you about implementing a DEI strategy? I know for seasoned executives, this is still a really new topic. It's definitely much more a part of the work culture today than it was even a year ago.
Definitely. I mean, looking at, really first looking at your board and your leadership, who are some of the makeup of your board and leadership, and do they really represent the diversity that you're looking for, or even your consumers, right? If a lot of the brands we work with, they're global brands, but a lot of time on their board or leadership, it's only one type of nationality. So you want to make sure there's that diversity there. And secondly, really putting your trust and invest in ERGs. For those of you that are new to this space, ERG stands for Employee Resource Group. And these are phenomenal just because, once you start your employee resource group, you now have champions and ambassadors, and offering them training in the space of DEI so that they can do their very best and become more fulfilled in what it is that they do at your company. And when people become, also this will really channel them into become better professionals and just better people, and also better versions of themselves. Right. And not everybody understands diversity in the same way. So a lot of times it's really starting with education, bringing in that consultant who knows how to do this, and they could really build out a path for your company that's suitable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel uniquely positioned working for BizBash and getting to interview a lot of industry professionals like yourself for stories. And I hear that a big challenge for them when it comes to DEI is tokenism. And when you're a leader who's trying to diversify your team, you may, even subconsciously tokenize somebody when you don't mean to. So how can you avoid this?
Great question. Again, the main thing is to make sure not to look at diversity as a quota. It really becomes tokenism when you hire a small group of individual from underrepresented group in hopes that this will save your company's image, right? Or they just start showcasing all these diverse people, but that's all they do. Or maybe they just mention their social media, but there's no plan or support that puts behind it so it has more legacy and traction. Some tools and action that you could do to help fulfill that is make sure you can hire diverse decision makers. Your company really thrives when your team member comes from different background. So you're not hiring an agency, perhaps since we're all event industry people here. People don't hire us just because we're Asian, right? We're a minority, we're women owned. People hire us because we're a really amazing events agency. The fact that we're also minority and a diverse group, then that's great. But to make sure your decision maker also look at that and say, hey, why don't we also reach out to other professional groups and see if we could find more opportunity in terms of whether it's people we hire or the supplier we use. And then listen carefully to the feedback. I think that's always one that I recommend, because you could as a lot of time top leadership really needs to hear what the rest of the organization is talking about and what they're looking for. So you could send out a survey, things like that, and then just really be mindful of the cultural background, so that I had someone tell me before, like, oh, what nationality are you? And they're like, I told them Asian. That's pretty broad, right? And then someone said, oh, are you Japanese? I said, I'm not Japanese, I'm Taiwanese. And they're like, oh, isn't that the same? And I'm like, no, it's not the same. Right? So really educating yourself in that space, and make sure your team also take DEI seriously. It's definitely a group effort, and a lot of times I would say the support comes from leadership, because there has to be a leadership buy-in. And some of the fantastic companies that they do this right is that they also measure and they are reviewed based on that as well. Like DEI is part of their performance review, which now people take it more seriously because it's part of that performance review. And then really just educating everyone about tokenism. There's tons of stuff I still don't know, and I'm still learning. Every day I feel like I'm learning something new, but it's just the fact that they're exposed to it, because they don't know what they don't know. So always give people grace. I have to remind myself that as well. It's like I can't just assume they know what it is, and I hope people don't just assume I know what it is, right? So it goes two ways. And the survey, kind of going back to the survey will really help management to know if some people feel like they're being tokenized, and that this is done. Make sure the survey is anonymous so that they don't get reprimanded if it's feedback that's not what you're looking for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know even we've discussed before, like it's not about anymore just saying you support DEI. You really have to be authentic and walk the walk and talk the talk. But with that being said, through all of this, you said have grace, but people can definitely trip up and make mistakes. And we're in a time where cancel culture is still a thing. So how can you have these open conversations that can sometimes be awkward and uncomfortable for others and give people grace?
A lot of time I always start with, hey, this is a space I'm not familiar with. Just be open about that and be open to have communication, right? Like the open communication, so that the person that you're approaching or the group that you're approaching has the mindset like, okay, it's because she doesn't know. Right. And I'm just open to learning more. Like I always appreciate that. I have people come to me and say, hey, I would love to learn more about Lunar New Year. Like, why is it you guys celebrate this? Why is this important for the Asian culture? And actually, not all Asian cultures celebrate Lunar New Year. It's actually only a few, selected that celebrate this holiday. Right. So it's kind of interesting. And for me, it's what I grew up with. But I know for a lot of people, that's not it. And even at our agency, right now is Hispanic Heritage Month. So we actually asked our team member who comes from that background, just like, hey, can you share a little bit about your background? We would love to learn, and it's really fun that they're able to share their culture with us. And it actually is such great insight because now, sometimes they do certain things where like, okay, it's because of that, right? That's how they handle it this way. And the culture is just so great. I love the diversity in thoughts, diversity in people. I truly believe that when you have that diversity, it really helps increase not only the culture building, but also in terms of profitability. And there are statistics that back that up as well.
Yeah, a great way, even, as a leader, to make all of your employees feel important and seen and heard. So I love that. And, you're based in LA, I'm based in New York City. We are really fortunate to live in places that are extremely diverse, could be arguably the most diverse places in America. But what about the event planner who doesn't live in a place that's so diverse and are looking to make their team more DEI focused? What do you say to them? How can they garner employees and make sure that they have a diverse team as well?
I love that question because I did get that question a lot previously as well. And you're right, in Los Angeles and New York, we are literally in a melting pot, right? But I think it's being intentional in your job description to be intentional about how you recruit. So for example, you could say native English speaker, right, may exclude proficient non-native speaker. Like English is my second language, right? So being mindful about those descriptions, and even for disability, right? People who might have a disability, and making sure like so for example, on the job description, if you write being able to walk around, you want to change that to being able to move around. So being mindful about the words that you're using. And again, there's so many professionals out there, but in terms of hiring people that are more diverse, there's so many professional groups as well that caters to a specific group. So being involved in that, or even your local chamber that could help you connect to those organizations that could help you find additional diverse talent as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And diversity obviously goes way beyond race. Like you even mentioned people with disabilities and maybe even like a speech impediment. You never know what somebody could be dealing with. And it all really bakes into the idea of being diverse. But as a leader, how do you make everybody feel included? I know you mentioned talking about specific holidays, but on a day-to-day basis, how do you welcome those diverse thoughts?
For me, it's just really about, it goes back to communication, right? And also really showcasing that our company has a commitment, is committed to DEI, not only in our dollar, the way we hire, it's part of our company culture, as well as that's how we celebrate, right? So we showcase, even when we're hiring, part of our benefit we talk about is we do monthly culture events. And those are fun events, but a lot of time, like right now is Hispanic Heritage Month. So we're definitely doing something that celebrates that. And then every year when it's Lunar New Year, we definitely celebrate that too. We do the whole rolling orange into the office. I pass out red pocket envelopes, or we give out candy, right? Because when you give out candy, that means something sweet is going to come into your life. So people love that. And who does?
Oh, she's frozen, but I think she was going to say who doesn't love candy.
Yeah. They come in a
Okay.
red box. It was through Sugarfina. So beautifully packaged and really lovely graphics, but ways like that, right? And then when it's Women History Month, that's also one that we love. And having topic, we're working on one event for a client too. It's like having those difficult conversations that you wouldn't normally have in a separate space, but just allowing space for that, and more so is allowing support, right? So they know this company supports that, or they have other people that they could go to have these kind of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a lasting thought for us, for the planners who, maybe working for an event company with leadership that isn't used to these conversations or hasn't ever really thought about DEI, how do you suggest that they navigate that? Or even if we have a planner tuning in today who doesn't think that they need to be thinking about DEI in any bigger capacity, what do you say to them?
Oh my gosh, definitely please start thinking about it. The world's ever changing and the world just got so much smaller when we pivoted 2 years into virtual, right? It's no longer just about where you are presently, but we're globally impacted. And I think, for event planner, I think it's huge. And to share, like a recent incident was one of my team member was trying to sign up for an event, but then they asked for a last name, and the last name they require at least three letters. But her last name is only 2 letters, like mine, M-A, right? So it's like, but then it kept saying air. And then so she literally had to make up a third letter just so the registration would go through. So even things like that, that's so simple, right? Being mindful of that and just being, the non-gender specific language or just being inclusive. And, the world's ever changing. I just say, kind of, it's part of our journey. I think one of the things I'm so grateful for Planner is we always strive to do things better, right? We could always try to elevate the event. And this is one of those spaces that have so much opportunity that we can grow, and we can grow as an industry. And I would love to see that because of all the people, all the industry, we're the most resilient, we're the best. So it's like we can do it together, and like I said, if it's something you're not familiar with, there's so many professionals out there who do this for a living as a consultant or full-time. So tapping into that as well. And I know BizBash has been a great resource in terms of just generating that conversation, providing some tools as well, right? But you really need to be intentional and seek out those opportunities and try to implement into your program, and don't give up. There's one of the boards I sit on. So I was the DEI chair. And I can tell you the first year was difficult because people are like, first of all, what is DEI? And then even for me, there was no job description for that board because it was new. So they're like, Amanda, you look like you know what you're doing. You figure it out. And I did. And don't give up, because I could tell you the first event I did was okay for the, and then second one. And by my third one, it was phenomenally successful, but there's always trial and error. So even within your company. So don't be afraid to, because sometimes it just takes a few tries to gain traction. So don't give up right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some things now? I know you talked about not even from the leadership side of it, from hosting the event. What are some things that you implement every single time now to make sure that you're appealing to a wide audience?
Really like looking at, I think, the culture, right? So it's because it's September. So normally we do a lot of internal or external events for our client. So recently we have an event coming up for September, and it was just going to be a regular associate event, but we actually open up the conversation with the client, say, hey, it's also Hispanic Heritage Month. Are you aware of that, first of all? And is this something that's at your forefront? And I know also for the client, it's something they're thinking of, but they haven't really branched out in terms of the execution. So we really have that conversation with them and say, hey, this is a great opportunity if you also want to celebrate different culture, because they also have a very diverse associate, team. Right. And they're nationwide, they're worldwide. So it's like, why don't we use this opportunity to create some synergy and also celebrate the culture? And they love it. So we're actually doing their Hispanic Heritage Month event, so it's a lot of time it's just building in that conversation. Right. And then
Right. And
also,
yeah, make your client feel really safe and secure, like you have their back, and you're starting these conversations if they're not. So it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. Like even what you guys are doing today, Shannon, like there's diversity in terms of the speakers. So you guys are definitely have this at top of mind. And, on behalf of everybody, I just really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And thanks for the BizBash shout out. We definitely try to, encompass all areas of the industry and diversity. Thank you, Amanda. And if anybody has additional questions for Amanda, you can drop them in the chat. And before we go into our next session, I'm going to open a poll up to our audience. So to all of our attendees, how often do you step away from your desk during the workday? Is it never? Is it 1 to 2 times a day, 3 or 4, or are you constantly on the run? Next up is Wes Woodson, the chief storyteller at the Hidden Company, who may have something to say about how many times you step away from your desk during the day. Just like his job title says, he's a storyteller that creates content, merchandise, and experiences that aim to empower everyone to love themselves as they are. And we're so excited to bring those good vibes to this event. So please welcome Wes Woodson. Hey, Wes.
Hello. Hi. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. This will be a wonderful event when we talk about mindfulness in the workplace.
Yeah, it's great. I think something everybody is thinking about as we're trying to office again. Some people are working from home. There's a big modge podge of, working styles today. And we're in a time right now, summer's over, although, it's never not busy for the events industry, but we're really in a time of year, school's back in session, a lot of corporate companies are ramping back up. So during this time, what wellness trends are you prioritizing?
Yeah, for me personally, like you said, summer is over for the rest of the world, but for the event industry, it's probably still kind of going through the patterns. For me, my wellness trends that I'm really kind of digging into right now is meditation. Specifically, I have this exercise where I call it 5-7-5. So it's a 5-second inhale, 7-second hold, and a 5-second exhale. Now, the reason why I love this exercise so much is because you could really do that at your desk. You can do that while you're stuck in traffic. I do it all the time with my eyes open. I do it literally in the shower. And I love it because it's so accessible and it makes meditation, which when you think about it stereotypically, you think you have to be in a quiet room, you think you have to be alone, you think you have to kind of open an app to do it. But 5-7-5 is a wonderful breathing exercise that you can really just do on the go. And it helps me remain in a sense of groundedness.
Yeah. And can you talk about the science behind that? Because I know there's a lot of people in the field house of like, oh, I can't meditate. There's no way I could shut my mind off, even for 5-7-5. So what's the science behind that may convince them that, it really does bring you down and help with your mindfulness?
Yeah. So, well, for one thing, I want to say too, I think when you think about meditation, you think you have to be perfect for the first go around, which is like not true at all. And I think if like I could use a metaphor, and when you think about meditation, I mean, as event planners and event professionals, we have like a million or thoughts like racing through our brain 24/7, whether that is like before we go to bed at night or even having our morning coffee. But what meditation in general does for you, it allows you to observe your thoughts. So I want you to imagine you're standing on the side of a road and you're literally watching traffic go by. You standing on the side of the road, that's you. Each car in the traffic, that's a thought that you're having. It's a choice to either kind of stand in the middle of the traffic, and sometimes we can feel overwhelmed or like, oh my gosh, there's so many thoughts that's going around of us. But meditation allows us to take a bird's eye view to all those overwhelming feelings. Because at the end of our day, I mean, according to what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT for short, it has been scientifically proven that our thoughts and our feelings and our actions, they're all related. But the top of that kind of triangle, they always use triangle to visualize this idea. The top of that triangle is our thoughts. So one thing we could definitely do to become more aware and grounded in our thoughts is meditation. So I really recommend 5-7-5 because it's so accessible. And I always say it's not about being perfect on the first go around, but it is about making consistent attempts to make progress, right? Over time. It's not going to be perfect the first day.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I personally think of wellness, I think a lot about mental health and even that idea of a bird's eye view. I love that. I've never heard that before. But
Yeah.
as we step into the future of work culture, it's going to become increasingly important that when employees sign up for a job, just as you get benefits for insurance and physical doctors, they're going to want tools for their mental health. So what do you
Yes.
say to leaders at the top who want to make sure that they're taking care of their employees' mental health?
That's a great question. I think we're living in a time where mental health is becoming less and less destigmatized, which is awesome. I mean, I love the fact that it's becoming a lot more normal to have these kinds of conversations. That's why I'm part of the reason why I'm so grateful to be given the opportunity to talk about mental health in the workplace. So I'm glad that it's becoming destigmatized. However, I think as leaders, it's so important to not only lead by example, but to normalize the conversation of mental health. So I would love to live in a world where mental health days are normal, right? Where we're taking days off because of your mental health is not seen as a sign of weakness, laziness, or making it up, because I really think us as human beings, we do need days off to take a step back. And now we're working from home, where whether you're working in your office, whether you've made a desk out of your bedroom, I don't know. Home and our workplace have now come like this, right? Right. It'll get in the back of the room,
Yeah,
right? So
you
I
get
think
back
that
to
is
the
important.
apartment.
Exactly, right? So this is a perfect example. Shannon is setting my example perfectly. That work and home have now become one of the same, right? One of the same environments. And mental health days can allow us to kind of reclaim that space for ourselves, to take a step back outside of work. So going back to your question, I think senior leaders need to normalize these things, normalize the idea, make it okay for having your employees to take mental health days off. Now, another thing I want to add too is having what I call in my mind wellness groups. Now, wellness groups in my mind are doing things amongst each other outside of work, because I think personally, in my own experience, when I did have a corporate style job, I was in this environment where I was like, okay, I have to come in, I have to do my assignments. And what I found was, going through therapy, my self worth was so much tied into what I was doing, right? And then when I
Right.
experienced a failure at work, I was like, oh my gosh, am I a failure? Right? But these wellness groups, my idea for a wellness group is doing activities as peers, as coworkers outside of the workplace. And I'm not saying happy hour. I'm not saying happy hour. I'm saying do things like going to a baseball game, going bowling, going to a museum, going for a walk, doing things outside of the workplace to remind you of who you are outside of work and to help you maintain a sense of wellness.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And, going to a baseball game, great thing. I think people, don't really know what to do outside of drinking.
No,
So
exactly.
great tip.
Right. Right. Right, of course, of
Yeah.
course. That's why I love it. I love thinking about these ideas that we can do outside of the workplace. I think traditionally, happy hour or going for a drink or going for dinner and drinks, alcohol has kind of always made its way into being outside of the workplace. And there's nothing wrong with the occasional alcoholic beverage. However, there's so many other ways to practice, I guess, non-work behavior, or kind of taking a chill pill, if you call it, than turning to a drink, in my opinion. That's why I love the ideas of wellness groups.
Yeah, absolutely. And what wellness trends can we expect to come to the forefront in 2023? I know when we're talking about meetings and events industry, there's been a push towards like certain free foods or vegan offerings. We've talked about even marijuana and THC and bringing that into the conversation. But what other wellness trends during events are you projecting that will come to the forefront in 2023 to help even, in an event space, take care of your mind?
Yeah, I really have this weird feeling. I don't know why, but honestly, movement. So there's what you call the three M's of mindfulness. There's music, there's movement, and then there's meditation, right? So we've covered meditation. I talk a little bit about music whenever I give a keynote, but movement is such this big thing. I think it's really important because when you think about virtual events like this, right, we're sitting down, I'm staring at Shannon, staring at me, staring at her in her lovely apartment. You have a wonderful bedroom and background, by the way. But we're sitting, right? We're sitting. So whenever we feel anxious, whenever we feel either low, and whenever we have these very unpleasant feelings, sitting and remaining in one space can be very dangerous. It can be very overwhelming. In fact, it can lead to even more anxiety. It can lead to even more of these unpleasant feelings arising. So what I see in the next few years is event spaces actually creating some and incorporating some level of movement throughout their experience to get people moving once again, both in physical spaces and in virtual spaces. Because I think the more we can instill a level of movement and getting up, I mean, when you think about what work life was like before the pandemic, I mean, when you would sit at your desk, you'd either stand up, walk to the water cooler, you stand up and walk to a coworker's desk, you stand up and do some level of movement. Maybe you take a break and go outside and go for a walk. There was still some level of movement in our day-to-day life as working in a physical space. However, now we don't do that anymore. right? We
Mhm.
log on to Zoom, we log on to Microsoft Teams, we log on to all these virtual softwares that allow us to meet in the virtual space. However,
Yeah,
instilling this level of movement can help us maintain a sense of wellness and help us take care of upstairs or help it take care of our mind.
exactly. Move a muscle, change a thought. So that's great.
Oh,
Um,
I might have to write that down. You're inspiring
yeah,
me.
that's great. But in the beginning of this session, I asked our attendees how often they step away from their desks. And I want to know from you, what do you recommend? How many times should somebody be stepping away from their desks to make sure that they're really taking care of themselves the way that they should be?
I think every case is different. I mean, one helpful tip that I do is I actually set boundaries in my schedule. Now, that's a luxury of mine. That might not be a luxury everyone else shares, but I think it's very important to establish a sense of boundaries of taking a pause from the screen time. I mean, even outside of work, one thing I do for my social media, right? Because I think it's so easy to be caught in the scrolling, you know what I mean? So one thing I do on my phone is I actually set parameters on my phone that only allows me a certain amount of time on the app, right? So when I meet that hour kind of benchmark, I take the whole app shuts down and I can't use the app anymore. But that's an example of me setting a boundary. And what works for me is I tend to stand up from my desk when I'm not on the go to go traveling or going on stages. I really try to take at least 3 breaks throughout my day if I'm working from home, just to get out and kind of interact with someone, get a change of scenery. So I think the magic number 3 always works in other things. So I always apply it to that question right there of like maybe 3 times in your day to get a set, take a moment to stand up and walk away from your desk and be okay with that.
I love that. And for
Yeah.
the people who work with, we have this whole influx of Gen Z coming into the workforce, and they're really
Mm.
prioritizing mental health in a way that, maybe other generations are not. So how do they set those boundaries with their boss when their boss is asking for something and they're like, you know what, I need a 10-minute break. I can't do this right now. I'll do it in 10 minutes. And how do you set those boundaries in a way that's not scary? Because that can be really intimidating to people just starting out.
100%. Well, I think it's all about communication, right? Because you think about your manager and yourself, that is a working relationship. And I think
Right.
we all have known that the number one thing you can do to maintain a healthy relationship is communication. But I think in the workplace, it specifically involves over communicating. So if your manager is coming to you and saying, I need this done by this time, you could say to the manager or the person asking you to do this task, like, "Hey, thank you for believing me into to accomplish this task. I would love to get it to you at this time. However, I'm personally going through a rough time. Could I get it to you at this date?" Right. So what I just did that I'm acknowledging what they're asking of me. I'm acknowledging how much they believe in me and my responsibility. I'm even still promising to deliver it at another time. But if you just see that example, I was over communicating instead of just kind of like being, attitude and being like, no, I can't do this right now. I'll do it later. Right. So at least your manager has the expectation and the communication that you aren't in the best place mentally, which is totally normal, totally okay. And now you are also saying, I will do the work at this date. I think it's always important to over communicate.
That's great. Thanks, Wes. And what is a lasting thought you can leave us with? Your big tip, your go to on how people can take care of their mindfulness, whether it's in or out of the workplace.
Yes, I think as event professionals or even working in a workplace, I think it's so normal to just kind of always be working and always be hustling, always meeting this deadline and that deadline. And kind of as a result, whether we look to realize it or not, we take a back seat to how we feel inside. So I think it's really important to remind ourselves to express a level of self-compassion that it's okay to not be okay. And there's going to be days when you feel great and there's going to be days when you feel low. And when you feel low, it's also okay to reach out for help because you're not weak for getting help. In fact, you are stronger because of it. So those are my 2 things. One, it's okay to not be okay. And 2, you are not weak for getting help. That's my big piece of advice.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Wes. Enjoy the
Thank
rest of your
you.
day.
You too.
All right. Bye. In our last speaker session, certainly not least, the event pro joining us is Christina Garnett. She's a community builder and a strategist, as well as the senior marketing manager at HubSpot. A seasoned speaker, Christina's been featured at national events like Inbound 19, Social Fresh 2021, and Adapted Digital Media Summit, just to name a few. Please welcome Christina Garnett. Hi,
Thank
Christina.
you so much for having me.
Thank you
so
for
much
joining
having me.
us. So to start off, we're here to talk about corporate social responsibility. So when I say that word, what comes to mind for you?
Purpose.
Yeah.
Really
Can
thinking
you
about,
elaborate on that?
yeah, absolutely. When you think about purpose and you think about social responsibility, I really think about the past couple years and how people have had to see their entire world completely shift and change. In some ways, accelerating technology, and other ways, seeing catastrophic news on a daily basis. And so, corporate social responsibility and being able to have purpose and drive and being able to align corporations and companies with good impact, with making the world a better place, it's something that we're collectively looking for. We're essentially looking for good news. We want desperately to have good news on our scroll. We don't want to doom scroll anymore. It's been years of that. So when you're thinking about companies and you're thinking about that social responsibility, how are they making the world better? It's not just revenue, it's impact. What does that impact look like on a local, but also on a macro level?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking about doom scrolling, obviously social media comes to mind. I think whether you're talking about a brand page or an individual's page, social media is a really unique tool. And when it comes to CSRs, it pertains to brand affinity and loyalty. How can businesses leverage that on social media?
I think that we just saw the masterclass of that. If you look at what Patagonia just did, where you're seeing them taking these steps over time, where a couple years ago, Patagonia said, look, we're not going to do any more corporate swag for people because we want to actually make sure that our brand isn't being used by other corporations that don't follow the way that we see the world and the way that we should be responsible for what's happening. And so now you have the latest news of the owner gave it away to be able to provide lasting stakes to fight climate change. I think that is the ultimate test of walking the walk. And a lot of brands, I'm sure there were a couple war rooms after that announcement and press release was announced, where you have brands saying, how can we do this without having to do this? like how do we get the same kind of love and press without doing the same things? And so hopefully you're going to start seeing more and more companies really taking this very clear view internally of, all right, well, here's what our branding looks like and here's what our marketing looks like, but what impact are we actually having? How are we actually making the world a better place? And so I think that's a really, really core thing to think about. I think it's also interesting in juxtaposition. If you look at some of the New York Fashion Week that we saw, there was definitely some polarizing events there where you had fast fashion versus haute couture. And so I think it was Boohoo or one of the fast fashion things, they actually had Kourtney Kardashian as their environmental ambassador. How does a fast fashion brand have an environmental designer unless you plan on completely shifting what you are? So people are paying attention, and they're not only paying attention, but they're really supporting or not supporting with their wallet.
Exactly. I know you and I have spoken so much about how social movements really are paralleled by the events industry. Our industry is very involved in current events.
Mhm.
And over the past 2-3 years, you've really seen social movements come and go in a way that they hadn't before then. And there's so many things to be thinking about now that we weren't thinking about years ago. It goes beyond Me Too, and we have Black Lives Matter, and even what Wes was talking about with mental health, that coming up, sustainability. So how do you align with one thing and make sure you have a really strong brand message, but at the same time also encompass all of those things? And how do you suggest that professionals go about that?
I think you have to really have it rooted in the core of what the company is about. It's very clear when companies change a logo or they have like a specific branding campaign, and then there's almost like you can see the cutoff. You can see like, all right, the campaign's over, the logos disappear, the messaging goes away, and we don't see any further receipts. It's very much activism campaigns, like activism marketing, instead of we're actively doing this. And so I think one example that HubSpot does really well that I'm very proud that we do is if you look at World Certification Week, education is incredibly important in any industry, and HubSpot Academy has been able to democratize education for people around the world. That on itself is amazing. However, the past couple World Certification Weeks, HubSpot's chosen specific nonprofits around the world to be able to donate money based on how many certifications were passed in that set time period. What that does is it not only lets you learn something, you're able to add something to your resume and prove yourself as a professional, but by doing that, you are creating good. You're creating positive impact. And so that's just one way that people are able to feel like they have a sense of control in this wild world where they're like, I just want to help. I just want to be able to do something good. And so what I would think about is companies are always looking for strategic partnerships. Look for a nonprofit strategic partnership. Who are the people who are aligned? Maybe they have a similar persona that you're marketing to, but who can you align with that matches a similar vision of what you want to do or what you already do with your company? And then where can y'all work together on events? What can you do to inspire one specific behavior? And for each of those behaviors, the nonprofit benefits. That's such a core way to not really do, like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. What you're doing is you're creating this new partnership. These people can work with you. They maybe help you with an ebook or help you with like a marketing event. But more importantly, you're able to have not something other than this is how many people attended. This is how many people watched. You can say like, this is actually how much money we raised. This is what we were able to achieve with that. And so if you're really trying to figure out what it looks like, strategic partnerships, really look and see who do you want to work with. There's so many great organizations, both local as well as worldwide. Make those connections, create those relationships. And if you are not sure of how to work with them, but you want to work with them, if you go in and say, we want to work with you, what would that look like? They will do the work for you. They'll tell you everything. Here's this opportunity. We'd love to do this. We'd love to partner on this. They'll help you figure out those pieces. And then that relationship can be long lasting, where you're mutually beneficial, where you're helping and working together. That's where you're going to be able to create impact.
Right. Great way to make a footprint.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What about the independent event planners? So you're working with a ton of different brands who may have a ton of different footprints and ideas of what CSR looks like. What do you say to them? How do they stay rooted in what they think CSR is, but going to work for a brand that may think it's something completely different?
I find that everyone has a hill they'll die on. Everyone has something that they naturally are deeply passionate about. It could be protecting animals. It could be cleaning up wildlife areas. It could be helping impoverished people in your community. But I find that everyone has something that matters to them naturally. And so if that needs to be your jumping off point, then look for the type of ways that if you care about like animal rescues, if you're working with brands, what kind of event could that look like? Start brainstorming from there. And then finding other people at the company, maybe they have groups that are already established for that. Maybe there's an employee group that focuses on this, or maybe there's an employee community that focuses on that. Finding people who could be champions within the brands that they're already working with to say, I'd love to do something about this specific niche nonprofit topic or area of concern. Are there people in your brand that already care about that already love that already want to fight for that? And so that way you automatically have people who will help you fight that fight, who will help you champion with leadership when you have to tell them, like, this is why you should care and this is why you should actively do this. And I think it's important to make sure that when you're doing that, you're also very clear about what the business goals are for the brands that you're working with, because like with most things, you have to pitch based on what they care about. And they might want to help, They might want to do corporate social responsibility, but they don't know how it aligns with their business goals for the year. And so because of that, and that singularly, they might be like, this is amazing, but we can't put budget to this because we need to put it towards something else. A lot of brands are doing that right now in prioritization because like we're seeing economic downturns in a lot of industries. So it's important to be able to not only know what's important to you, find champions within the brand, but be able to speak that language to leadership. Have the business acumen to know, all right, I know your company really wants to target this specific group of people. Well, did you ever think that these people love this or they care about this? Maybe that's an opportunity for you to connect with that audience, which is going to help your business and help you reach those goals. But also, you're going to be able to do good. You're creating impact and you're being able to match those goals. Alignment is incredibly important for CSR. And I find that that's the fight that most people are trying to do. Is it's not that the ideas aren't there. It's not that the nonprofits aren't there raising their hands and knocking on their doors. It's how do you build that alignment so that leadership gets it and is willing to put forth the budget?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're leadership at a company, what about internally? How do you make sure that your team is aligned with the CSR that you value?
I think it comes down to communication. A lot of companies have silos. And so there might be something happening that a lot of people would be passionate about, but they don't know what they don't know. So finding opportunities to be able to collectively speak to the vast majority of the company. If it's really important to your company, then you want everybody to know about it. Is there a way that you can announce to everyone in the company, hey, this is something that we're doing. It's a new campaign. This is really important to us. Here's how we're activating, and here's how you can help. That's another thing. There's so many companies who will tell you all these great things. And my response is always, how can I help? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to share something on LinkedIn? Do you want me to share something on Twitter? Do you want me to donate? Like, what do you want me to do? That's the power of these things is you need to announce, but you also need to help them mobilize and let them know what that looks like. A lot of people would love to help, but they don't because they don't know how. And they're afraid, like, I don't want to get in someone else's business. I don't want to feel like I'm trying to take over a campaign when the fact is they just want to help. So once you're communicating with people, once you're making sure that everyone understands what's happening, make sure you're really, really transparent about what you want them to do. How can they help? What does that look like to them? And then they're more likely to do that behavior. There's no reason to put those unnecessary blockers there. Let them help.
Right. It's so interesting because in the last session, Wes's piece of advice was over communicate when you're talking about mental health. And Amanda before that was like, just communicate, get the conversation on DEI started. And now after you saying that, like, I think overall there just needs to be more conversations. And even though you may have hybrid and work from home teams, like even more so be like communicative and communicate with your team members.
Absolutely.
And to talk about how we can communicate with our customers, though, how does a CSR strategy and sticking to it create bonds with customers and therefore promote retention and growth, which is ultimately what everybody wants?
It's the same thing. You need to be able to have multiple distribution points. I know email's great, but email isn't the end all be all. It's not going to fix everything. Some people don't want to check your email. Some people, it automatically goes into spam. So you need to have a very clear understanding of not only how you want to communicate with your audience and your customers, but how they prefer communication. Some would rather have a text message from you. Some would rather see an ad. Some would rather be on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn. Others want an email and nothing else. Create multiple distribution points, find ways for them to connect, and just like with your employees, find ways to mobilize them. Let them have opportunities to connect. If you have a banner that you want people to share and help get the word out, provide those social cards, provide those assets. It still blows my mind how many people have to like right click to get assets from companies whenever like you just send it to them. You want to help spread the word? Here's every single thing you need to know. You want links? Here's every link you would ever need to know. You want to help? Here are all the different ways that you can help and get the word out. I find that if you look at everything that's happened in the world from 2020 to now, the biggest thing wasn't us moving away from each other. It was how does that shift our communication? And I think it shows that our communication was flawed before the pandemic and it's still flawed now. We're still consciously trying to figure out how can we be better communicators and just be really transparent about what we need. And I think that that's what you continue to see with a lot of business issues is Businesses don't know how to effectively communicate with their customers, so they feel frustrated. Customers feel like they can't have enough agile communication with the companies and vendors that they're working with, so they feel frustrated. And then employees are just trying to do their job, wherever that is, whether it's in the office or home or hybrid. And so I think communication is the key. But I find that if you're very honest and very transparent about what your message is and what you want people to do, they are more likely to do it for you. And especially with all the work that I've done with advocacy and what we're doing at HubSpot, we're trying to make sure that we're very clear about, here is how you get to be a part of this community, and here are the types of behaviors you can do, and you really get to choose what works best for you. Like, pick your own adventure as to what your use case is and what your job to be done is. And once you get out of their way and you let them know all the possibilities, they do it. They want to connect with other people. So I find that a lot of companies, they get in their own way. Just get out of the way. Just be very clear, communicate, be honest, and show that you want them involved, and they will step up. They will raise their hand.
Yeah. And I mean, you're a manager, you're in a manager position at HubSpot. How do you implement those choose your own adventure type strategies when you're managing people in your job and with the people below you? How big is your team? And can you just show us what that looks like?
Yeah, so I have a really great team. I have contractors under me. I have my entire advocacy team. My manager, Rodrigo, is absolutely fantastic. And we work with this really wide selection of how we're doing these jobs to be done. So I have the HubFans program, gamification. I've created the Revenue Council and HubFans Council. And so we're slowly getting that onto another member of my team, and they're going to run the councils at HubSpot. And then we have our customer stories. We have an amazing team, Natalie and Jamie. They run our customer stories, really trying to create those materials and making sure that people see what we're working on. I think at the end of the day, you need to be able to understand all the different possibilities. So I'm a big game theory fan. I think decision trees are incredibly powerful. You have to do that like Doctor Strange maneuver in Endgame, where he's seeing all the different possibilities of what could happen. Really think about it and take that time to figure out, all right, here is everything we're doing. How could employees react to this? And build that decision tree out. And then same thing with customers, same thing with your community. What are all the different behaviors that they could do? Do we want them to social share something? Do we want them to volunteer for something? Do we want them to attend an event? Do we want them to share it? Do we want them to answer questions during the event? Think about all the different behaviors that they could be interested in doing and make sure that that is an option for them. I find that with a lot of our advocates, they love behind the scenes access and they love being seen as subject matter experts. So I'm constantly trying to figure out what are all the different opportunities that we can provide to be able to do that. And inbound correspondence is a great kind of personification of that. They're not just fans of HubSpot, they're deeply knowledgeable. And so they go to inbound and they get to tell you everything that's worth knowing. Here are the takeaways. Here's what I thought was the most important part. Here's what I can't wait to implement. And here's how I would implement it. It's basically like you get your own cliff notes into any session at inbound. That's incredibly powerful, either because you were busy, you were working during the event, you didn't get to go to that session, or maybe that session's not your bailiwick. Maybe you went to a session being like, I know nothing about this and I'd love to learn more. It's an opportunity to let them be the hero. And so when you're thinking about CSR, how can you create a plan to make the world better? And then how can you make your customer base the hero of that? How can you activate them? So not only are you doing good, but you do good and take no credit for it. It's on them.
Exactly.
They're making it a better place.
I love that. And I do have an audience question for you before we wrap this up. But do you have any tips on how to best find out what CSR your clients and community prefer? So I guess if you're somebody who doesn't have a strictly defined CSR at this moment, how do you tap into what your audience is already interested in?
Social listening. I absolutely adore social listening, especially in a market research capacity, because people talk on social listening, especially when they don't mention you. They are very candid. They'll tell you things differently than they necessarily would in an NPS. So they understand, if they're doing a survey for you, they understand the company is seeing that. And that may or may not be the same kind of tone, the same kind of urgency that they would if they're talking on social. So what I would do is have a keyword list of things that you want to be searching for across different social platforms to figure out what people are interested in, what's important to them. So not only can you determine like what they're passionate about, but why they're passionate about it and what they themselves have either done themselves or what that looks like. I find it's really interesting to be able to learn from people when they don't know you're paying attention. That's why a lot of people do social listening and they'll only look for the posts where they were tagged. I immediately look for the stuff where we're not tagged. I immediately search HubSpot, no ad, because they don't necessarily intend us to see that. And so that's going to tell me more than the stuff that they're specifically writing, saying, like, I want HubSpot to see this message. I want them to respond to this. Social listening is immediately the best tip I can give. You have to, and I do it every day. I'm constantly looking for how are people talking about us? Is there something that is someone having an issue that maybe I need to send it to the product team so that they can determine, like, is maybe someone from the top product team can respond and help them and maybe see, like, all right, how can we make the experience better for you? Or maybe someone's getting kudos and they never saw it, and I can send that to somebody and be like, you're getting love on Twitter right now, you should respond if you want, and just say thank you, like things like that. there's
On the
so
wall.
there's so many opportunities to connect with your audience in such a thoughtful, organic way if you social listen. Absolutely, social listening is like an untapped opportunity for so many brands, and you don't even have to respond to the things if it goes against your social media strategy, but just paying attention and wanting to learn more and more about your audience. They'll tell you what they want. They will always tell you what they want, and a lot of times they'll tell you how to do it too. I've seen like conversations where people will roadmap things for you. I've roadmapped things for companies and be like, this is exactly what I want, here's how I would do it, here's exactly how I'd implement it. Like, they'll do the work for you, but not if you're not paying attention.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Christina. In our final session, I'm going to invite all of our industry experts back to the screen for a Q&A session. Unfortunately, Wes is jet setting off to Miami for a work event, but I'm joined by Michael Chance, Emily Wilson from 6Connects, Amanda Ma of Innovate Marketing Group, and Christina Garnett of HubSpot. Hi, everyone.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Hi there.
So I'm going to start off with a question directed at Michael and Emily. I know your team at 6Connects has been remote from the start, and 85% of your team is still work from home. But for that 15%, how do you make sure they feel the camaraderie of the workplace and know the workplace culture that 6Connects offers?
Yeah, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Oh, I'll start and then you can chime in. I was going to say that, whether people are working from an office some days or and part of that 15%, or they're working remotely every day, we include everyone in all of our different engagement activities. The team that is closer to an office, they do certain activities and certain events in person together. But we found that, regardless, we include everyone in all of our events, and they enjoy participating in those as well.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I think it's also key to kind of celebrate our wins. I think sometimes we kind of lose a little bit of our vocalness when we go completely virtual, and we have to build that back in. So we've talked a little bit about transparency, I think, in some of these previous sessions here today. I was listening in, a lot of great points. But being vocal about our wins and celebrating them together outside of just these tentpole meetings is really key. Beyond that, I would also say, for someone who's kind of working remote, what we try to also do within our like departments, core groups, and even just for like new hires shadowing different team members, we try to make sure that we let them know it's okay to make mistakes. Like, that's going to come natural with the job, totally fine, as long as we learn from them. So I think that's key to kind of just like take any anxiety away, is to kind of say, it's all right, we're here together, we're going to learn together, and continue to kind of collaborate as best we can. So those are definitely some tips I would recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amanda, post-COVID, how are you officing again? I know your session was about diversity, and there could be such a diverse way that people are handling with the shift back into office. And so what has that shift looked like for you, and how are you giving grace to your employees?
So we shifted back to hybrid work, and so far it's worked really well, and also allowing a little bit more flexibility, even though it's hybrid, but things come up. I think people are so used to working from home, right? So allowing again that grace, like if something they need to address or take care of at home, we have one of the staff needs to, one of their pipe burst one day, and then another one, something happened, like it has to do with their dog because everybody adopted a pet during the pandemic, right? So they need to take care of the pet because their significant other who was supposed to be home got called into work. So we're like, yes, it's okay, you can work from home. But I think it's at the end of the day, is having that transparent conversation about flexibility with responsibility, right? You can have the flexibility as long as everybody is responsible and finishing what they need to do and do it well, then we are very flexible in terms of that method. And I love what Christian said about celebrating wins. We also do that, and we do that on a weekly basis. It's actually part of our agenda for every department, including leadership. So it gets funneled up. We see all the wins from various departments, and also at the high level, what are some of the big wins, small wins. So it's all embedded in there. And every month when we do culture events, that's brought up again, because again, they're celebrating within the department. They may not necessarily know at the holistic approach, but that board is shared company wide. So at any time, anybody can go in and give shout outs or celebrate win. And we definitely encourage any big or small. We don't discriminate, because a lot of times all the small wins add up to the big wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a CEO, you're obviously making very high level decisions. So as you look further into the future of your workplace, do you see it ever fully being you have to come into work full time? How do you, forecast that that's going to look into 2023 and beyond?
No, I think we will stay hybrid, or but is hybrid with flexibility. That's what we call it here, because for me, at the end of the day, we're a people first company. And that's just not the world that we live in now, at least not the team that we hire here. So allowing them that flexibility, but being very clear about our communication, our expectation. So I don't think we'll go back to fully remote, but that the reason why we still are very big on hybrid is because then the days they are in is focused on collaboration, ideation. So we don't lose that part of the juice of the agency, because when everybody come together is so powerful. And I see it in action. I think during the pandemic we were able to do it virtually, but when people came together, the energy level is so different. And sometimes just like, okay, I need an idea, and everybody turns to one person and just shout out some ideas, and she's like, this is great, I've been like stuck for an hour, and literally within 5 minutes she has like 10 ideas that she can extract from. And that's the power of why being in person is so powerful. So
Yeah, absolutely. And Christina, I think you and I are the same here, where we're fully remote team members, part of an organization that has a hybrid model in place wherever they're based. But you're in a unique position being a manager. So how do you keep that camaraderie where the people that you manage might be in office and you're at home?
I think it all comes down to being, once again, you need to be transparent and making people comfortable in their own way. We had inbound a couple weeks ago, and it was just very telling to me, because we've been able to work so well and efficiently in a remote capacity. But also, there is something, like Amanda was saying, there's something so magical about being in the same room at the same time. And so I was able to meet my entire team. And I'm not a hugger, but I was like a hugger for a week in Boston. Like, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
But it really kind of cemented for me that there needs to be a situation where, like, I love remote. I think it provides flexibility. I think it also opens you up to being able to get the best talent, because location doesn't stifle who you're able to work with. And so you really get to choose the best people in the world because their location isn't an impediment. And so I love that ability. But with the same time, I need like couple times a year where we like purposely come together to be in the same room. But I also think that that means that we could do like opportunities to come together and work, but also have really cool opportunities. So like we were talking on our team, like, could we just to go to a concert together. Like we work all day, but then we go to a concert. Like something really cool. Because there's parts of you that you can't show on a Zoom call. So there's like everyone gets to see each other after 2 years, just like, huh, you're not as tall as I thought you were, or you're shorter than I expected, or things like that, which is just really cute. But then you also do like a vibe check. Like, I like you on Zoom, but like, do I like you in person? Like, is the vibe the same? But it was lovely. Everyone was exactly as nice as I was expecting. It was a really nice time. I do think you need a little bit of both. You need that human connectivity, but then the efficiency to be able to do your job from wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, building work culture is already such a challenging thing, but how did you manage to establish a work culture at Six Connects with your platforms?
Yeah, well, big help with Emily with all those initiatives that she presented earlier. But I think as I was kind of mentioning in the presentation, like when we have things that are virtual, sometimes it kind of can feel static, right, without something truly live. So if we've got team members going into extravaganza, it very easily could be static. But what we actually have done is make it basically have a pulse, and we do that through bringing in our social media, having consistent meetings. I think that's really a key thing, is the consistency. Making sure our team members know that they're basically the tentpole moments where you can come in either weekly, monthly, quarterly, and we're all like really celebrating together. So definitely kind of having a consistent pulse. The other thing too is I find sometimes that there's like these really awesome opportunities in virtual where you can have really cool functionality to make things a little bit more spontaneous. Pop-up meetings that aren't necessarily scheduled. Like you could have what one of our partners Appreciate. They have this really fun kind of social way of chatting with your webcams and basically moving around your webcam to go chat with new people in a proximity chat of about 6 people. So it's really cool kind of having those pop up. Also, too, hiding items throughout, like kind of your little venue, and making sure team members know they can explore it. So making kind of like internal education fun takes a little bit of extra effort, and you do have to put on your kind of imagination cap. But it's a pretty welcome thing. I think if you have creative team members and you give them a little bit of latitude from management down, and kind of say, hey, go out here and create something. I trust you to do that. Get internal feedback from the department leads, and then from there, roll it out. I think sometimes we want to just kind of like create something, it's done, and say, why did it work or not work? And with us, we always are looking for adoption. So it's not just completing the task. The big thrust of it is like the whole, I would say, like months afterwards, where we're actually engaging the analytics and saying, is this working, or how is it changing? So I think, outside of the consistency, it's consistently looking at the analytics and saying what's working and how can we continue to improve that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And with that, we're going to wrap up. To our virtual audience, thank you so much for tuning into BizBash and Six Connect's virtual event today. I hope you were all able to forecast the future of work culture a bit and got some actionable takeaways to implement in your workplace, whether that's in person or remote, moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you.